What's up, guys? Welcome back. Fenyks-Gaming here with another episode of Raid Shadowlegends. And today I kind of wanted to make a fun video because I was reminded of the interview between Ash and Sylla when a certain statement was made about how there are no bad champions.
Our internal religion is that there are no bad champions.
While that may be true in one way or another, we can certainly state that there are some champions that are just way game breaking, or account changing rather, that can completely change how you progress through the game, or the rate at which you progress through the game. And today I wanted to make a video going over the top legendary pulls, fusions, fragment summons, whatever they are, that I got on my account that really set my account up to catapult to the next level. And the reason I wanted to do this was so that you could keep an eye out for champions with similar kits or similar utility that could potentially help you taking large strides in progressing your account in the future. So let's get into it. First, my account's a little less than a year old. I think I'm coming up on my year anniversary in Raid, and anybody that started in the past 365 days is aware of this champion and hopefully has this champion, because anybody who has him knows or can attest to the fact that he is completely account changing and account breaking. First, we want to start off with the MVP of 2021, Underpriest Brockney. Okay, this guy is an absolute monster of a champion. When he came out and his kit was revealed, everybody was kind of, the whispers were in the wind that this guy was going to be account changing, or he was going to be a hard carry in all areas of the game. So let's go over his kit here and see what he does. Right, on his A1, it's just a standard attack on one enemy, but he has a 45% chance to place an HP burn debuff for 2 turns. That books up to 60% chance to placing an HP burn, which is applicable and relevant in so many areas of the game. Now, of course, you do have to build that with some accuracy, and if you weak hit, then you have no chance of placing that HP burn. But in most scenarios, placing an oddball HP burn is really useful. Even if it just comes on one enemy, it really adds up the amount of damage that it can do over time. Moving on to his A3, which is empowered by his A2, we have a block debuffs, increase attack, and a shield based on his max HP, 30% of his max HP, which is massive, for 2 turns. And this is on a 3-turn cooldown when booked, so you can, most of the time, if you have like a buff extender, keep this up full time in a lot of fights, and it proves really useful in making your team, even the squishies, even those light guys, be really resilient and stop buffs or debuffs from going onto your team, and increase the amount of damage that you do. Let's circle back to his A2 now. His A2 attacks all enemies with a 75% chance, 100% chance when booked, of removing 1 random buff from all enemies. Of course, that requires accuracy. And it also removes 1 random debuff from all allies. That's huge. That's massive. As a kicker, it increases the value of the shield buffs on all allies by 30% of the damage inflicted. Now, it's Underpriest Brockney's kit that made possible things like the Infinity team in the Demon Lord clan boss, which has, it completely shattered the record for previous builds on Demon Lord, where, there are teams that go, that break the turn limit for clan boss these days, and then go in excess of like 200 million damage. It's absolute insanity. It does scale on his damage, which is attack based rather than HP based, which, if it was HP based, this would be way too broken. So if you want to really maximize how much you're increasing that shield for things like the Infinity team, then you need to prioritize damage on Brockney as opposed to HP. But still, super great ability. It's outstanding. Now, the kicker of his kit is that whenever somebody attacks anyone under shield buffs on the same team as Underpriest Brockney, a portion of that damage is reflected. 25% of that damage is reflected. It also heals the person who has the shield, the champion that has a shield, by 25% of the damage inflicted. This is the ultimate ability of in utility and sustain in the game, in my opinion. It's one of the best abilities out there, one of the best passives at least. And it doesn't matter whose shield it is. Like, somebody else can apply the shield and it will still apply these same effects, which is absolutely bonkers. So you see teams walking in with a Krisk and a Brockney in arena, and you already know that first round of nuking, unless you're stripping those shields off, you're not going to hurt them. You're not going to hurt them. So you have to bring accuracy to compensate for the shields that other champions are bringing in, including Brockney's. To top it all off, the shield that Brockney places cannot be removed. It's a protected shield. It's a protected buff, right? And these days, back when he came out, you didn't see it. We didn't have this feature in the game, but these days you see the protected buffs have that little yellow outline around them so that you know. So yeah, super cool champ. Definitely one of the strongest champions in my roster. Came from a fusion, a difficult fusion, albeit. I mean, this one was a grueling 2 weeks of competing events, pulling champions, and things of that nature. But 100% worth it. Anyone who didn't fuse him and has seen him in other teams wants him. So that about wraps it up for Underpriest Brockney. Let's go ahead and move on to the next game-changing or account-changing champion on my roster. So we're going to go to, and I mentioned this champion before, the first legendary I ever pulled, Tyrant Exelmore. Highly regarded as one of the best AoE HP burners in the game. He took my spider team from like level 10 or stage 10 all the way to stage 20. In fact, he's used in stage 25 as well. His A1 heals his champion by 25% of the damage inflicted. Heals him for 50% of the damage inflicted if the target is under an HP burn debuff. That's anybody's HP burn. So if you have several HP burn champions on the team, he heals himself for 50% of the damage inflicted. It pays to make this guy slap. His damage does scale on defense as opposed to the HP that he is. So that's one little but still awesome champ if you build him right, and he fills so many roles in this game. His A2. This is the ability that, in my opinion, is my favorite. Really changes the game for me. Attacks all enemies, has a 100% chance to place an HP burn debuff on all enemies for 3 turns. Okay, 3 turns. That's a long HP burn and a 100% chance to land when booked on a 3-turn cooldown. So you can keep HP burn up full time if you have your speeds correct and you're not landing weak hits. Of course, this kit does require accuracy. Again, this damage scales on defense, but he is such a strong champion. I've even seen builds on, I think, Ivy League Gaming, where Tyrant was soloing the spider on level 20. So she was taking Tyrant and leveling food champs, basically, while running spider, getting all that silver, potentially getting, great accessories for her champs at the same time. So, like, stellar champion to bring in and have on your account. His A3, nothing to laugh at. Places a 50% ally protection buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns. Places a 60% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns. That also is on a 3-turn cooldown. Super simple kit, very effective. And one little kicker to his kit here is that damage inflicted by enemies under HP burns is decreased by 10%, right? So if you pair him with someone like Geomancer, and I've done this on the Hydra clan boss to show its efficacy, you can drastically reduce the amount of damage that the enemies are doing to you if you place Geomancer's HP burn on the enemy, right? Because those 2 passives will stack, because it has to be Geomancer's HP burn for the Geomancer passive to take effect. But yeah, moving on, let's go to the next one, and I'm going to catch a lot of heat for this, I know it, but I've talked about him before. I use him in several teams. He was so hated when he was about to come out. He's the most recent Halloween fusion, Vlad. Now here's why. Let me defend myself before you rage quit and unsubscribe from the channel or dislike this video. I did not have a Void Affinity AoE nuker on my team. Prior to fusing Vlad, the only Void nuker I had on my team was Krutraxa. And Krutraxa is cool and all, but in places like PvP, heck, even PvE, you can't count on a single target damage dealer to get the job done. right? So let's go over his kit. A1 decreases the target's max HP by 30% of the damage inflicted. He is my Scarab King damage dealer, right? It's really useful in Scarab King to just have this destroy built in, but that's pretty much the only area of the game that's applicable. I take that back. I have actually won long 3v3 arena fights because of that ability. Because I was able to whittle champions down or enemy teams down to where when they were resurrecting or when they were reviving the teammates, they weren't coming back with an appreciable amount of HP to stay alive long enough to reset their revive cooldowns. So I have actually won fights outside of Scarab King because of that. Is that ideal? No. Should I have built him better for that scenario? Arguably, yeah. And I admit that. But he is a multifaceted champ right now on my account, and he plays in many areas of the game. I don't focus build him for any one part. His A2. This is a really cool ability. Attacks all enemies. Has a 100% chance when booked of placing a leech debuff on all enemies. Okay, so if you're worried about sustain or you don't have lifesteal on your team, which if you're past mid game, you shouldn't have lifesteal on your team. He also has a 100% chance of stealing 50% of the turn meter from champions from Bannerlord, Sacred Order, or High Elf factions. Has a 100% chance of decreasing the turn meter by 50% instead if it's not from those factions. Now, some people say and argue, and I kind of have to agree here, that these conditional type abilities are kind of annoying. But I gave him a pass because one of the most used turn meter manipulators or turn meter boosters in the game is a High Elf. Right? So if you can outspeed the other enemy team's Arbiter, then you can likely, or even their Lysandra, then you can likely go 2 turns before they even get to go once. And that's all the difference in PvP. So he gets a slight pass there. Even still, if it's not from those factions, you decrease their turn meter by 50%. So on those Valkyrie teams, still really useful. And this damage has some. This ability has some good damage multipliers, so that's just icing on the cake. Mine isn't even built to perfection. Doesn't have a lot of ignored defense and not incredibly high attack, and he still does work on enemy teams. Let's see here. A3. This is the hard single target hitter that can also lock out the enemies. 100% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns, and the second hit has a chance of placing a block active skills debuff for 2 turns. Really strong in arena if you're manualing those fights and you're picking and choosing who to lock out. Like if I can go before a Sifi and lock out her abilities, then all the better. Then that team becomes a completely different story. If both debuffs are placed, he places a perfect veil on this champion for 2 turns. I built him as a jack of all trades kind of deal, and he does well in most areas of the game. Not completely invincible, but he does well. Moving on, the next champ that completely changed my account. We're going back to dwarves. They're getting a lot of love this year. Turndig. This guy is awesome. If you have Turndig, you know why. Prior to him, I did not have a good campaign farmer on my account. I was still using Kale. He was in 5-star gear. My runs were anywhere from 20 to 35 seconds long, depending on RNG, weak hits, so on and so forth. But I built Turndig, and I can change up his build a little bit to make it even faster or, do even more work in more areas of the game. But I built Turndig to farm my campaigns, and I got those runs down to a low of 9 seconds. Now, that's not the fastest in the game. We know that. There's a rare Fellhound that can do it faster. But I don't really want to build a rare out to 6 stars specifically to farm campaign when I have a legendary that fits in so many areas of the game that can do this in a comparable time. Okay, so we're increasing the time by 50%. You spend more time on the load screen. Let's be honest, right? So let's go over his kit. I really love his A1. Any champ that can reset their turn by killing something is a great champ in my mind. Additionally, if he kills something with his A1, he reduces the cooldown of his A3. Right, and we'll get to his A3 here in a sec. This ability actually hits quite a lot as well. It's a slapper, right? Couple that with the fact that he has good base stats for his attack. He's a good champ all the way around, just with his A1 if we take that into account. His A2 attacks all enemies, has a 100% chance when booked, placing a 60% decreased defense and a 50% decreased accuracy debuff for 2 turns. So if you're looking to apply these, you do need to bring some accuracy. But if you're just doing a nuker, a damage dealing nuker, then you might want to forego those. I have ideas for bringing him in as a weaken and an HP burn for Hydra. It will require some speed tuning, but the ideas are kind of floating around up there. Some big brain stuff there. It's A3. Attacks one enemy. Fully depletes the target's turn meter. Will also attack all enemies if the first attack is critical. Again, needs some accuracy. This AoE attack has a 75% chance of placing a 25% weaken debuff for 2 turns. Will also place an HP burn debuff for 2 turns after the attack on those enemies whose turn meters are below 30%. So if you speed tune it so that on his second turn, the Hydra's turn meters are all, below 30%, so you'd have to go pretty fast and you'd have to have the accuracy to do this. You can get out a weaken and an HP burn on the Hydras at the same time. This is going to require some serious tuning and will likely only be applicable to one difficulty of the Hydra, but I will be trying it out in the upcoming months. His passive fills the champion's turn meter by 10% every time they're hit. It only occurs once per hit, but that's a lot, right? So this is kind of harkens to like Astralon a little bit, who fills his turn meter every time his allies are hit. This is great if you want to cut in line with the enemy team. Also fills this champion's turn meter by 20% whenever an ally dies. So if you have some squishier champions on your team during arena, or heck, even during faction wars, he can cut in line again. Right, moving on. This next one is good news for everybody because she's free to play friendly. Sylla Drake, right? I'm not going to say underrated, but I am going to say a little bit underappreciated because people are always highlighting other champions, whereas Sylla Drake's that free login champion after 180 days is an absolute beast. Defense based, okay? Actually has good multipliers and good base stats. Her speed, is a mediocre speed, but that's fine. Anyways, let's start with her passive. This is one of my favorite parts of her. Heals all allies by 10% of their max HP at the start of each turn. Also places a 30% increased speed buff on a random ally for 2 turns. Really, really valuable to put her in a relentless set. I don't say that about a lot of champions, but Sylla Drake is one of those champions that kind of belongs in a relentless set if you can get the stats out of them. Okay, I do recommend crit capping her and building that damage because, again, as I mentioned earlier, she does have some good multipliers. Okay, well, let's go back to her A1. 20% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns and a 30% chance of decreasing the target's turn meter by 15%. These can be buffed up to 50% chance of doing so, and I do recommend spending the books on Sylla Drake. She's well worth it. She will pay you back in dividends. A2, this is really strong too. Some people, if you can't put her in a relentless set, toss her in a stun set. Attacks all enemies 2 times. Each hit has a 35% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. If you fell victim to her in the past, you know how strong being stunned for a turn in arena is, right? You can't do anything. You're locked out. Damage is based on defense. So if you crit capture and you built, good crit damage and defense, then that's gonna hurt too. Her A3, this is really what makes her like a really strong all-around champ. If your account needs a good reviver, revives an ally with 50% HP and places a 50% ally protection buff on them for 2 turns. That ally protection is crucial because they're not coming back with full HP, and if they die, it's because they're probably squishy. That ally protection is one of the strongest damage mitigation buffs in the game. It's going to really aid in making sure they don't go immediately back down. Alright, moving on. I really underestimated the next champ that I'm going to mention. I underestimated her usefulness when I pulled her. I was kind of like, man, that's cool. I hear she's strong, but, I'll build her just because. But, yeah. Wither the Crown. This lady changed my account in Doom Tower. When I say changed, I mean flipped it over. She just makes your team incredibly sturdy, and that comes in a number of ways. Her A1, 50% chance of placing a leech debuff. That's as high as it can go. Also places a continuous heal buff on a random ally for 2 turns. So every time she's going and using her A1, she's placing a continuous heal on somebody. Okay, and that is on a random ally, so there is some RNG there, but she more than makes up for it. Her A2, this is a really crazy one, places a 60% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns. Also increases the duration of all continuous heal buffs on all allies by 1 turn. Then instantly activates any continuous heal buffs on all allies. So she increases the duration by 1. She consumes one of those turns. Net gain of the duration is 0, but she also heals everyone who has a continuous heal on them by 15% of their max HP. Her A3, this is a big nuke heal. Removes all debuffs from all allies, then heals all allies by 30% of this champion's max HP. This champion's. You build her with high HP. She's got a great base HP, run on that. Those HP percent buffs are going to only benefit her more because of how high her base is. Okay, her passive, bonkers. Every time she takes a turn, this is kind of Doom Priest-ish, places a 15% continuous heal buff on the ally with the lowest HP for 1 turn at the start of each turn. Very, very strong in keeping your team alive. Even with a level 50 5-star Umbral Enchantress on my Demon Spawn team, she kept everyone healthy the entire time. And guys, I keep passing over the auras, but ally resist in all battles by 50, that's a serious boon to your team's sustainability. Additionally, she's been showcased in several videos across YouTube where she is like the key member of a practically unkillable arena defense team. So can help your arena team a lot just by the way of increasing your arena rankings by not losing fights. You don't always have to win attacks. You can also just win defenses successively to increase your ranking. A lot of people probably overlook this one because of the challenges you have to go through to get her, but Arbiter, right? It's very unlikely that you're going to progress to a serious point in Arena without her, right? I know you have to get to Gold, I think 2, might just be Gold 1 before you get her, but getting to Gold 4 without her is very, very difficult unless you're fortunate enough to pull things like Kymar and a Seeker or a Valkyrie or a Lysandra out of Shard, and we all know how highly coveted those champs are. But this one is effectively free. It might take you a while. It might take you 4, 5, 6 months. One of the mistakes I made with my account when I started is that I kind of ignored those missions to start until my brother, who'd been playing this game longer than I had, told me, he's like, you need to get caught up on those because Arbiter is going to change your account. And he was not wrong. She comes with a single target weaken on her A1. She comes with a decreased buff duration for the enemies on her A2, and that's AoE, and it's on a 4-turn cooldown. And then she comes with a turn meter boost and increased attack and a heal if they're below 50% on a 3-turn cooldown. Very useful in keeping your team alive and moving and doing damage in a number of scenarios. Revives all dead allies to 35% HP on her A4, and then fills the turn meters of all allies by 20%. This also grants an extra turn if an ally was successfully revived. So she uses her revive, right? She boosts everybody's turn meter, and then she boosts everybody's turn meter again. Talk about cutting in line. That's rude. But I mean, she's useful in so many places in addition to Arena. I run her, of course, in Faction Wars. I run her on some Hydra teams with like a Shamal comp. I put her in the lead spot so that she can cycle through her turns and get her A3 and boost everybody's turn meter fairly frequently. Her aura, increase ally speed in arena battles by 30%. Massive, right? That is one of the highest. Yeah, so super valuable. If you haven't started your missions or you haven't completed your missions, get on it. She will change your account. Right, moving on to the last one that I'm going to mention for today because this video is getting a little long. We have Martyr, the OG account carry. Now, I was young in the game when I pulled her. I think I was 3 months. I had been playing for about 3 months, And I think I was chasing Bad L. I know I was chasing Bad L during a 10x. And Martyr came out. And my first reaction was like, that's cool. Looked over a kit, and I didn't know much about the game at the time. So I wasn't super excited. I told my brother, he said, "You lucky jerk." We'll say that. She brings everything. She brings everything. She is a game changer. I know she's a little old school, and you know, she doesn't really get used a lot in endgame per se, but for me, she gets used a lot. I'm what you would probably call late mid game, not quite end game. I have all the dungeons cleared to 25. Have not cleared Doom Tower hard. You know, I have a 2-key team on Ultra Nightmare Demon Lord, and she's a part of it. Let me show you why. Her A1. We have a pretty high % chance of placing a decreased defense. So we have 75% chance of placing a 6% decreased defense on the enemy for 2 turns. Okay. Now, anybody that runs, you know, clan boss, you know, pretty seriously, or Demon Lord pretty seriously, knows that keeping your debuffs up is key, right? And the fact that she brings one of the key debuffs on her A1 is fantastic, particularly because her A2 puts on a counterattack on all allies in addition to an increased defense. This lasts for 2 turns. Now, if you pair it with another buff, with a buff extender, much like Brockney, you have this for 3 turns. It's on a 3-turn cooldown. You can keep counterattack up and increase defense up full time in places like the Demon Lord clan boss. And that's actually what I do. I pair her with Brockney and I pair her with Godseeker. And I've speed tuned them such that Brockney puts up his buffs, she puts up her buffs, Godseeker extends them. By the time they're about to fall off, they come back on again. Right? So it's full time. Increased defense, shield, counterattack, block debuffs, you name it. She is such a strong champ to pair with champions like Brockney and Godseeker. So if you're thinking about Godseeker, side note, if you're thinking about Godseeker, this video is only on legendaries, but if you're, you know, on the fence of pulling those 25 voids, that's a bit of a steep price for me and my account. But if you have 25 voids laying around and you need a champion like Godseeker and Neri, then yeah,
just do it.
Do it, right? Her A3, 4-turn cooldown, attacks all enemies, places a 50% decreased attack for 2 turns, and then a provoke debuff for 1 turn. And her damage is all based on defense. So if you can crit cap her, bring her with, and get the good accuracy and, you know, good defense, then she can actually do some damage while being super sustaining. There was a Murder Inc. video that came out recently where he put her in a full stone skin set, and she was literally invincible for 2 turns, and she had like no speed on her whatsoever. And he was 1v4ing some arena teams with Martyr. She's a monster. Albeit, mind you, she was a +4 Martyr, I believe. But still, it was outrageous to see that happening. She also brings a defense increase in all battles aura. Right? Very, very useful. Okay? I use her in my 3v3s. I use her in my Doom Tower floors. She's particularly useful on the Mortem Cob waves, where you need to, you know, keep them CC'd and do damage to them at the same time. She's a game changer there. So those are the champions that changed my account. Drop a comment with the ones that changed your account. Right? There are a lot of champions in this game with a lot of different abilities and skill sets, and you can build a lot of interesting creative combos to get through most of the content in this game. So I want to hear from you. Tell me what champions you have that completely change your account for the better. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this content, then leave us a like and subscribe. I'm going to be making more content like this, as well as Hydra videos, Demon Lord videos, Doom Tower videos, you name it. We'll be going over all the content in Raid, and you know, helping you build strategies and progress through the game. So that's the end of the video. Thanks so much for watching. Take it easy. Y'all have a good one.